If you have walked through the aisles of a grocery store recently, you have likely felt a growing sense of unease. The numbers on the price tag seem to climb higher with each visit, turning a routine shopping trip into a source of significant financial stress. That feeling in your wallet is not just your imagination, it is a reality for millions. We are all asking the same question. Why is everything getting so expensive? The answer is not simple. It touches every part of our lives. The food on our dinner tables, policies being decided in Washington, D.C. This is more than just a temporary spike. It is the beginning of a larger story about our food system. To understand the full scope of the problem, we need to look at the hard data. Official statistics paint a clear and worrying picture. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the cost of food has been rising faster than almost everything else. While the overall inflation rate, measured by the Consumer Price Index, hovers around 2.7%, food prices have surged by 3% in the last year alone. This might seem like a small number, but for an average American family, these small increases add up very quickly over the course of a year, eating into budgets that are already tight. Meats, poultry, fish, eggs. Together, the price of meats, poultry, fish, and eggs jumped by an alarming 5.6% between June 2024 and June 25. The cost of eggs has seen one of the most shocking increases, soaring by 27.3% in just 12 months. That means a carton that cost around $3 last year might now be closer to $4. This is a tangible, painful increase that families notice every time they shop. These price hikes are not just a statistic. They are a source of major stress for American families. A recent Forbes poll revealed that nearly 90% of Americans are worried about the cost of groceries. In fact, 53% said rising grocery prices were a major source of personal stress. Housing costs, credit card debt, healthcare expenses. The daily need to buy food has become the #1 financial pressure point for a majority of the country. Looking ahead, predictions from agencies like the United States Department of Agriculture offer little comfort. The USDA forecasts that prices for all food items will increase by another 2.9% in the coming year. Food purchased at the grocery store, food at home, is expected to rise by 2.2%. Meanwhile, the cost of eating out at restaurants is predicted to climb even faster, by about 4%. These are not just abstract percentages. They represent a continued strain on the financial well-being of every American. Many of us rarely think about the complex agreements that keep our grocery stores full year-round. North American Free Trade Agreement, United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. They work by removing or lowering tariffs, taxes on imported goods, so fruits, vegetables, other agricultural products cross borders cheaper. Mexico-Canada. Together, they send over $75 billion of food to the U.S. every year. Tomatoes, avocados. Berries you buy in winter likely came from Mexico. Grains and meats often come from Canada. This flow keeps shelves stocked and prices in check. But the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement is now under threat. Renegotiation talk is creating uncertainty for importers, farmers, businesses. If tariffs return or the deal weakens, imported food could get much more expensive, and those costs hit consumers. These deals allow specialization and lower costs. The current administration's approach to trade has been defined by the aggressive use of tariffs. A tariff is a tax placed on goods imported from another country, and the idea is to make foreign products more expensive to encourage people to buy domestically produced items instead. However, when these tariffs are applied to food, the consequences can be severe and immediate. If the United States places new tariffs on food coming from Mexico, Canada, it is the American companies that import these goods that will have to pay the new fees. These importers will not simply absorb the cost, they will pass it on to wholesalers, to retailers, and finally to you at the checkout counter. The current push for renegotiating the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement is creating a storm of uncertainty. The administration has hinted at widespread tariffs if its demands are not met, effectively threatening an all-out trade war with our closest neighbors and largest food suppliers. This aggressive stance is making businesses nervous. Without a predictable and stable trade environment, importers are hesitant to sign long-term contracts. They do not know what their costs will be in 6 months or a year, making it incredibly risky to plan for the future. The timing of this trade dispute is particularly dangerous. We are currently in the summer months, when American farms are at their peak production, supplying much of the fresh produce we see in stores. However, as winter approaches, our domestic growing season ends. During the cold months, the United States relies heavily on imports from Mexico to keep our grocery store stocked with fresh fruits and vegetables. If a trade war erupts and new tariffs are imposed this fall, we will feel the impact almost immediately. The supply of many essential food items will shrink, and their prices will inevitably skyrocket just as domestic supplies dwindle. The logic behind this trade policy seems to prioritize making a political statement over ensuring the well-being of American citizens. Proponents of tariffs argue they will protect American industries, but in the case of food, we simply do not have the domestic capacity to replace what we import, especially not at a comparable cost. Disrupting a $75 billion food supply chain from our neighbors without a realistic plan to fill the gap is a recipe for disaster. It threatens to create a national food crisis, where basic items become luxury goods, and the pain is felt most acutely by working families trying to put food on the table. When faced with the threat of tariffs and disrupted imports, a common question arises. Why can't the United States just grow all of its own food? It seems like a simple solution. If we produce everything at home, we won't need to rely on other countries. However, the reality of modern agriculture is far more complex. Farming is not like manufacturing widgets in a factory. You cannot simply flip a switch and ramp up production overnight. Growing fruits and vegetables requires years of planning, significant financial investment, specialized infrastructure, and most importantly, the right climate and growing seasons. One of the biggest obstacles is nature itself. The United States has vast farmlands, but much of the country experiences cold winters that make it impossible to grow crops like tomatoes, berries, and lettuce year-round. We rely on imports from warmer climates like Mexico to fill this seasonal gap. Building the massive number of greenhouses required to replicate these growing conditions domestically would cost hundreds of billions of dollars and take decades to complete. Right now, the United States lacks the infrastructure on a national scale to replace the fresh produce we import during the winter months, making self-sufficiency an unrealistic short-term goal. Furthermore, the current climate of economic uncertainty is actually causing American farmers to pull back, not expand. With rising costs for fuel, fertilizer, and labor, and unpredictable trade policies creating market volatility, many growers are choosing to reduce their risk. Some have started to scale back their operations by farming only a portion of their available land. They are doing this to conserve cash and weather the storm of instability that they see on the horizon. This means that at the very moment some are calling for more domestic production, our own farmers are producing less, not more, leading to an even tighter food supply. This pullback from American growers highlights a critical point. Farming is a business, and it requires a predictable environment to succeed. Without stable trade relationships and clear long-term policies, farmers are unwilling to take the huge financial risks associated with planting crops. The uncertainty is simply too high. There is another critical piece of this puzzle that cannot be ignored: the issue of labor. Even if American farms had the climate and infrastructure to grow more food, they are facing a severe and worsening labor shortage. Planting, tending, harvesting, primarily done for decades by immigrant laborers, many from Mexico, many from Central America. These workers are the backbone of American agriculture, yet their numbers are dwindling. This shortage of helping hands limits U.S. farms' ability to produce enough food. Recent crackdowns on immigration have made this labor crisis worse. Despite promises not to target agriculture, increased ICE enforcement has sent a wave of fear through immigrant communities. Workers are afraid to travel to jobs, many stay home, or seek work in less visible industries. The downstream impact is undeniable. Fewer hands are available to harvest our food. Many ask why American workers don't take these jobs. For decades, domestic workers have not been willing to do this difficult, seasonal, often low-paying work. It is physically grueling work, often in extreme weather, for short temporary periods. Our agricultural system was built on immigrant labor. Without it, the system begins to break down. The consequences of this labor shortage are straightforward and severe. When a farmer cannot find enough workers to harvest their crops, that food is left to rot in the fields. This means smaller harvests, which leads to a tighter supply of food available to the public. When supply falls and demand stays the same, prices rise. The crackdown on immigration directly contributes to higher food prices. Without a stable legal workforce, farms can't operate at full capacity, and we all pay at the grocery store. While rising food prices affect everyone, they do not affect everyone equally. The burden falls most heavily on low-income families, senior citizens on fixed incomes, hourly workers whose wages aren't keeping pace with inflation. For households that already spend a large portion of their budget on necessities, a 10 or 20% increase in food costs can be a catastrophe. It forces impossible choices: paying for groceries, keeping the lights on, buying necessary medicine. This is the human cost of policies that ignore the vulnerable. For these families, the stress is immense. Grocery shopping becomes anxiety, meticulous planning, coupon clipping, trips to multiple stores. Many cut back on fresh, healthy foods, fruits, vegetables, lean meats. They turn instead to cheaper processed options. That leads to long-term health effects: obesity, diabetes, other diet-related illnesses. The grocery crisis is becoming a public health crisis. The impact extends to organizations that support them. Food banks, pantries, charities are struggling with their own challenges. Donations don't go as far anymore. Disruptions in the supply chain, reduced agricultural output, less surplus food available for donation. They're being asked to do more with less at the moment need is greatest. This growing inequality in food access should concern everyone. A nation where many can't afford nutritious food is in trouble. As we stand here in September 2025, the outlook for American grocery shoppers is grim. The trends we have discussed, rising prices, trade tensions, labor shortages, are not likely to reverse course anytime soon. All signs point to the situation getting worse before it gets better. With the push to renegotiate the USMCA trade deal and the threat of new broad-based tariffs on the horizon, we are likely to see further disruptions to our food supply this fall and winter. As domestic harvests wind down, our increased reliance on imports will clash with protectionist trade policies, and the result will be felt in every supermarket in the country. Consumers should prepare for two major consequences: persistently high prices, the increasing possibility of empty shelves. The days of taking a fully stocked grocery store for granted may be coming to an end. Certain items, particularly fresh produce like berries, avocados, tomatoes, may become much more expensive or even periodically unavailable during the winter months. The cost of meat, dairy, is also expected to continue its upward climb as costs for feed, transportation, labor continue to rise. Families will need to be more strategic with their shopping, perhaps planning meals around what is available and affordable rather than what they desire. This matters to everyone, regardless of your income level or political affiliation. Access to a stable and affordable food supply is not a partisan issue. It is a fundamental requirement for a functioning society. When food becomes a source of stress and insecurity, it affects public health, economic productivity, social stability. The current crisis is a stark reminder of how interconnected our world is and how fragile the systems that sustain us can be. The political decisions made in Washington have a direct and tangible impact on the daily lives of every single American. Ultimately, the future of our food prices and availability will depend on the policy choices we make in the coming months. Will we continue down a path of economic nationalism, disrupting vital trade relationships and placing the burden on consumers? Or will we seek a more stable, predictable approach that recognizes the importance of international cooperation in keeping our nation fed? The answer to that question will determine not just the cost of your next grocery bill, but the health and well-being of the country as a whole. The shocking truth is that our food security is more fragile than we ever imagined.